Welcome. All right. So I'm Ruffian. I'm the executive director of the Friends of the Wissahickon. I feel like I'm seeing lots of friends out there, and I've got a heckler even, David Bauer. Lots of good friends here. How many folks were with us on Friday night? Debbie was here, Jim was here, thank you. Friday, we celebrated one of several parties we're having this year to celebrate our 100th anniversary. And so this is one of our 100th anniversary Valley Talks. FOW is thrilled to have Kate Cowing with us. Kate is an architectural conservator and registered architect with more than 25 years experience in preservation architecture. She's the principal of her own firm, Kate Cowing Architect, located here in Philadelphia. And she's been honored with the title Association for Preservation Technology Recognized Professional. And this presentation stems from her graduate school thesis, The Analysis and Restoration of the WPA Outbuildings in the Wissahickon Valley, which has been presented both locally and nationally. And I will say that, you know, I've been familiar with Kate's name. It's funny that this is the first time we've met, but read it for years throughout FOW newsletters, whenever we're talking about the WPA structures. That graduate thesis is a foundational document that's used by the Friends, by the Parks Department, and many others as we circle back to these buildings, both for what we know is a great deal of interest in the built history of the Wissahickon, and then a great deal of need in stewarding those buildings. You don't just build them and leave them and they stay perfect forever. Our good friend, the weather, can really attack them. And our good friends here in Philadelphia sometimes also cause the buildings to be undermined. This is a little bit longer introduction, but it happens that today I was looking through an old newsletter and I found and then recalled my first few months at FOW back in 2006. FOW was running a campaign with Weaver's Way to raise funds to rebuild the building at the Mount Airy Avenue location. It had burned down and there was a lot of need to rebuild it. And they used Kate's thesis as the document that guided that restoration effort, working with Teresa Stallman at Parks and Recreation on that, rebuild of a historic building. So this is something we've been at for a long time. And we have here with us someone who's been at it for a long time with us. And what a great thing that is, 25 years, to be at this, to be an expert in these buildings, someone who's continued to be a resource on other projects that we've had. So we have a real treat for you tonight. I'm obligated by, I guess, myself, since I'm the executive director, to also give a little pitch here. If I can advance, can I do it? Here we go. Is everyone here a member? Yeah, and a lot of people are volunteers too. And if you're not, I'd encourage you to look into both of those options. It's a great year to get involved. All of your efforts, contributions of time and resource really are moving the needle on stewardship in the Wissahickon. You've heard a little bit about one aspect of our work, historic preservation, but we are doing so much more. Land conservation, stormwater management on a large scale and small scale. We have large capital projects. We have projects that we execute with staff and volunteers, trash removal, invasive removal, restoration plantings. If you want to get involved, there's definitely a way to do it. So I would encourage you to, if you're not already involved, to get more involved. And with that, I will turn it over to Kate.
Yeah, what a treat to know your graduate school thesis actually became something. And so many people say, oh yeah, it's just on the shelf, and it's online now. All Penn's theses are, and I can see how many people checked it out before they made it electronic, which is stunning. So I want to thank you for your interest. Thank you guys for coming. I want to thank the Chestnut Hill Conservancy for supplying quite a lot of the photographs in this talk. and the Friends of the Wissahickon for making this all happen. And that's quite literal. They not only are they giving this presentation, but they funded my thesis back in 1996, 97. And they made these buildings that we're going to be talking about possible. They've been right in it the whole time. So before I get to the buildings, I'll give you a little bit of Wissahickon history. Not that you guys need it, but just in case. And we'll go over a little bit about city park design, a little bit about the development of Chestnut Hill, all of which is relevant, I swear, and a little bit about the Great Depression. So the Wissahickon Valley is within the city limits, is 7 miles long and 1,400 acres. It was one of the very first properties to be designated the National Natural Landmark. There are actually only 600 of them currently, and it was one of the first, so that's pretty awesome. In the 19th century, it was considered a tourist destination, and it was world renowned. People came from Europe to come see the Wissahickon. And it was put at the level of Niagara Falls as far as tourist destinations. It was brought to light by an actress and writer named Fanny Kemble. And she wrote a travel book that included the Wissahickon in it. And that started people coming. And there's artists such as Thomas Moran, James Peale, Currier and Ives have all painted the Wissahickon. George Lepard has written about it, and so has Edgar Allan Poe. So our lovely Wissahickon, it's beautiful, natural, but the reality is at that time, until the park took it over, there were more than 50 buildings along this stretch. They were mills. There was a mill as early as 1686 down in the lower Wissahickon by the mouth of the Schuylkill. And of course, the first paper mill up in Rittenhouse Town in 1690. And over the years, there have been log mills, dye mills, nail cutting mills, as in nails, you know, oil mills and textile mills. There were also inns. There were at least 7 inns. Some of them were really nice. Valley Green always had a great reputation, but some of them were real dives, including the this one here. Everybody can see my cursor. Shoot. Anyway, it's the Log Cabin Inn, and it was notorious for being a dive. There were gangs that came and they fought each other, and it actually kept wild animals in the inn, including 2 bears who were tied to chains and apparently knew how to uncork bottles. So when Fairmount Park started buying properties in 1868, the liquor laws killed the inns, most of them, and the mill structures were taken down to create this natural wonderland we have, which is kind of ironic. You know, it was this big industrial park, but people still came because it was beautiful. And then we make it this wonderful natural area, which you'll see why that's ironic in a little bit. Wonderful natural parks was a 19th century park movement. They were supposed to be picturesque parks. And they would be an antidote to urban life and add to the quality of family and community. So come the 20th century, there was a change in attitude towards parks. And it was called the Parks Reform Movement. And city parks were supposed to give city people places to go to just expel energy. So they were supposed to have ball fields, golf courses, swings, slides, picnic areas, tennis courts, et cetera, et cetera. Comfort stations, refreshment stands. And there was a national study done in 1925 that found that most municipal parks were moving along and doing really well at upgrading, except Fairmount Park, which this national study actually calls out as one of the worst parks because they wouldn't upgrade them. Okay, so now I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about the development of Chestnut Hill. So most of you probably know that the Houstons and the Woodwards are pretty much have developed most of Chestnut Hill. In order to do that, they actually recruited Italian immigrants, particularly from one section of Italy. And it's said that between 1890 and 1930, they took more than half the population of the town, the main town. By 1930, there were 4,000 people from that area living in Chestnut Hill. And they came to be stonemasons, tile workers. They came up eventually and had started their own quarries. They were general contractors. So here, I mean, these are literally pictures of the guys in Chestnut Hill. I mean, and the names you still hear in Chestnut Hill. Then the Great Depression came. And it came early in Philadelphia because, believe it or not, already that early, manufacturing jobs were disappearing. They were changing styles of manufacturing, and that was putting people out of work. By 1929, which is the general accepted date that the Great Depression started, there were already 8,000 families in Philadelphia that had been foreclosed on or evicted. And leading up to the Great Depression, and this is a fact I didn't know until just last week when I started researching to make sure I was up to date on stuff. There was a belief in the United States that it would be anti-democratic to have government support for people who were having a hard time, that all of that should be taken care of by private citizens. So this, of course, put all those Italian immigrants that Woodward convinced to come in a really bad position. Because, of course, there's no real estate market in the Great Depression. So the residents of Chestnut Hill started making work. They created, well, you can see over on the corner there that they had people pulling out sticks and fallen logs out of the Wissahickon, because apparently there were forest fires were something that happened pretty often in the Wissahickon. And so they were having these guys clean the dead wood out. They made many of those beautiful walls in Chestnut Hill were make-work projects for these guys. And the gates, much of the stonework was actually not done by the residents for request. It was done as a make-work project. But, the Depression was just too big and they couldn't keep it going. So I suspect an audience such as you guys already knows quite a bit about this, but just in case, I thought I would review the WPA, which is the Works Progress Administration. It started in 1935 as part of the New Deal. And one of the unique things about it versus the CCC that we've all heard about in national parks, the CCC was for people who had no skills and had no family. And they were taught skills they took them out to the national parks and taught them skills and had them build things. The WPA was for people who had skills and had families and didn't want to move. And it was for all kinds of workers, not just construction. You can see here, there's an archaeologist who's helping extract a bone that's in Texas. The archaeologist was out of work. So they made a project for him. There were theater troops, the Federal Writers Project. One of the interesting things for me as an architect is the Historic American Building Survey, which is still a thing, was created in the WPA era. It's something where architects go out and measure important buildings and keep them on record with the Library of Congress. And it was not only created by the WPA, it was created by a Philadelphian who worked with a local Philadelphia altruistic society that existed before the WPA, the one that to employ people. The committee couldn't keep up with the need either, but I find it incredibly interesting that this thing that is still going on in the Great Depression. All right, so to get a project with the WPA, a municipality or a person, an organization had to write a proposal and be the sponsor who would pay about 10% of the project, including materials. So in the Wissahickon, and this is where I said literally, the work relief programs were funded by the Friends of the Wissahickon and partially by Fairmount Park. So these are men working in Fairmount Park. The park discovered that this was a really great way to get all that parks reform movement stuff done. You know, it was a great way to put up ball fields and get bathrooms. And so they had huge amounts of make work projects. There were several different organizations that funded this. And from 1931 to 32 was the Lloyd Committee I just mentioned, which was privately funded. They assisted the full-time staff with the park, and the Fairmount Park chief engineer said the park had never been in such good condition. Then from 1933 to spring of 1934, the Civil Works Administration worked in the park. They were just a stopgap thing that the federal government put together while they were trying to figure out what to do. And it was really only to get people through the winter of 33, 34, 34 to 35. The local works administration took over the projects that were already started in the Wissahickon. And then finally in 1935, the WPA began here. People like the Friends of the Wissahickon, Senator Woodward, who was a member of the Friends of the Wissahickon, but also privately donated things, and other wealthy people in Chestnut Hill donated money, materials, and even land to build up work. And part of the land that they donated was Harper's Meadow. This was the first construction project that the WPA finished in the Wissahickon, and it was a different project than the one I'm mainly talking about. This was finished in 1935, and it you can see that it's fairly formal and it stands out in this image. It stands out in the field. It's something that people want to look at because it's a pretty building. That is a contrast to the later projects. So right about this time that Harper's Meadow finished, the National Park Service started to figure out that there were going to be a huge amount of structures built with these make work projects, and they wanted to get a handle on it. They wanted to make sure that the structures fit with the parks. So they produced this parks and recreational structures. It first came out in 1935, and then by 1938, they reprinted it much more in depth into 3 volumes. And it gives you a sample of practically everything you could put in a park. Tells you how to build benches, tells you how to build bridges, fire pits. And then the top right corner is an example of a picnic shelter from Arizona. And I put that one in particular in because one of their insistence was that the buildings match the area they're in. So that picnic shelter would look horrible here, but in Arizona, it fit really right in. There's some great nation to make a feature of a building, which is one of the reasons I pointed out Harper's Meadow. That building is the feature. of that meadow. And then this one I particularly love. A cluster of buildings shall be avoided. When possible, multiple uses could be provided under one roof. Localizing of infection is preferable to an irritating rash of trivial structures. So their guidelines were essentially keep the buildings low of natural materials from the area, keep them in harmony and scale of the area they're being built in. And it's clear that the designers of our project were following these guidelines. There's no doubt. So this project that I'm talking about is all the little buildings along Forbidden Drive. And it began with Mrs. Frances Ballard of Chestnut Hill, who put a proposal together for a very small project in the Wissahickon. And it would, so that the stonemasons could be employed. That was her specific goal. There's actually no written proof that this happened, but the people I interviewed with my during my thesis knew her and acknowledged that she was the one who started this. But the city felt that her project was much too modest, and so they proposed to the WPA a massive project. They saw the opportunity to upgrade the Wissahickon to the Parks Reform Movement and created this much larger plan that was approved by the WPA in August of 1937, but not presented to the public until November. It was called the General Improvements to the Wissahickon, and it was the second single project in the entire Fairmount Park system. Second single largest project. And so you can see by the numbers up there how intensely invasive this would be. 200 rest seats, 80 rustic benches, 600 picnic tables, 16,000 feet of bridle paths with 12 rustic bridges. But none of that was really controversial. The baseball field, 6 tennis courts, 3 baseball backstops, 10 picnic areas, 12 toilets, 12 shelters, and 4 large shelters. People didn't like very much. It really didn't go down very well. So these were the newspaper articles that came out right after November 1st, 1937. Will the Wissahickon look like this? No hot dog stands for the Wissahickon. Hot dog shacks peril the Wissahickon. And the one, I'm sure you can't read this one, but the one in the bottom says, that's not a headline, says sternly opposed to frying of puppies or anything else in the park. So, like I said, that was the 28 buildings and the picnic areas, and that just really went down poorly. There were so many more letters to the editors that it really took the city by surprise. And it was the idea that the WPA would actually ruin this natural wonderland that the park only created 60 years before, but it would be ruined. Just was horrific. And some of the newspaper articles quoted prominent citizens of Chestnut Hill, such as Senator George Woodward, who wrote, "We are opposed," oh, he was representing the Friends of the Wissahickon, by the way. "We are opposed to erecting any sort of shelter in the valley. Such structures would make the valley lose its naturalistic appearance and give it the semblance of an amusement park. We think the plans are rotten." And then Judge McDevitt of the Saddle Horse Association described the plan as sacrilegious and disgraceful. And for some reason, the park didn't understand that this was happening. And in the same article that those quotes were taken, Alan Corson, the chief engineer of the park, was quoted as saying, "Refreshment stands will be a convenience for the picnickers who wish to buy ice cream, cake, candy, or soft drinks. If the concessioners want to sell hot dogs, well, presumably they'll be permitted to sell hot dogs, unless there's a serious objection." So then Senator Woodward took it that step further and decided to use his political clout. So he called Harry Hopkins, who was the director of the WPA, like the guy. And but the project was already approved, so Hopkins can't say, oh, no, never mind. So he respectfully told Woodward to talk to the Fairmont Park. So that's what happened. The Friends of the Wissahickon and the Fairmont Park officials met at the Valley Green Inn and they negotiated the project. They honed it down substantially. So it's only 10 buildings and 3 picnic areas. It was 3 guard shelters, 3 toilet buildings, 2 large picnic shelters, 1 small picnic shelter, and 2 unique trail end structures. And also 2 of the mill buildings that still existed were rehabilitated to be able to be used. So this is the 10 box Lincoln Drive building. And you can start to see in these drawings and horizontal. It's using natural materials from the park. They all, except for the toilet buildings, had schist bases and log uppers. They had wood shingles, and the siding in the gable end is supposed to look like logs. It's called deckled siding. All of the materials came from the valley. They actually opened a quarry to pull the stones out. And the logs were felled in the valley, which saved the park a lot of money. And they used traditional log construction. Sorry, the stones they used were no bigger than any stones you would find just walking the trails. And the logs they used were about the same size as the average tree, just so it would all fit in. The roofs were super low pitched, so it emphasized horizontality and essentially had an unobtrusive nature. They were cited to be inconspicuous. They, nope, sorry. They were cited to be inconspicuous. They were all, but they all like were on Forbidden Drive, but they just blended in, almost all on Forbidden Drive, but they blended in so well that they were a huge success as far as the National Park Service was concerned, and I think the citizens as well. So 10 Box and the Bell's Mill structure were the 2 trail end buildings. The National Park Service said the trail end buildings should be unique so that people know when they've entered and exited the trail. And you can see here the Bell's Mill structure on the bottom is just about exactly the same scale as that example from the National Park Service's book. The Lincoln Drive structure, the 10 Box, had a guard shelter or a guard's office, the regular shelter for people, which you can go up to Rittenhouse Town through, toilets, and then this building on the end was supposed to be storage until Fairmont Park found a concessionaire to rent bicycles. There had been a bicycle rental guy in the park, and he lost the concession to this man you can see standing out there. And he took down all of the buildings he used for his bicycles just in spite. So this man said, well, what am I supposed to do? Okay, I can't build all new buildings. And so they said, okay, you can have the storage area at the end of this. So, I mean, I love that picture.
Am I taking questions? Is that okay?
Sure.
Or is that Bell's Mill building still there?
Yeah.
With no 10 Box, right?
Yeah, it's still there. It's right at the stop sign when you're going towards Chestnut Hill.
Go at the Ridden Drive.
Yeah. Yeah, right where you stop to let people pass. I knew that at one point and I don't remember. You do know that?
It's the only surviving name of all the structures that had telephones. Telephones in, and they refer to it as a telephone box.
Okay. Okay.
1 box, 2 boxes, and that's the only one that kept the same.
Okay. Should I repeat that for the Zoom?
That would be great.
So it's called 10 Box because it was the only surviving example of telephone buildings that had telephones in them, and they were called telephone boxes.
Please, right? For the guards, right?
Yeah. Well, the other ones, the shelters are also for the guards, so I'm wondering why they're not called boxes. Anyway. All right, so this is the Bluebell Picnic Shelter, and so only 2 buildings were built off of Forbidden Drive, and it was Bluebell, and there was one on the opposite side that was called the Walnut Lane. It was the same exact layout. And they were set up on top of the hills because they were for recreation areas. They both have a big open pavilion area with a fireplace and toilet rooms on the back of them. Bluebell was for the ball fields that are up there, and Walnut Lane was for the golf course. It's right at the edge of the golf course. Well, it's not anymore, but it was. But what's interesting, again, to look at the National Park Service's recommendations is that the 2 buildings look very different. There's still work is very, very different. The stone on the Roxborough side, so they used the stone straight from the site. Then our third picnic shelter is the Bell's Mill Picnic Shelter, which is, a simple 4-post roof shelter. Okay, so the guardhouses. So let me repeat that. I wonder why the guardhouses aren't called boxes. Because they all had phones. They all had a wood stove so the guards could sit there and comfortably. All of the guard shelters used the same floor plan, exactly the same floor plan. The only difference was the way the porch area was enclosed. On Kitchens Lane, it's on the edge of a cliff, so they have a wall around the outside of it. At Allen's Lane, which is Mount Airy, it was close to the river, so they created this really nice cascading set of steps down to the river's edge. Rex Avenue was in a picnic area, so it's practically at grade. And that was the only difference between any of them. They're the ones I think people particularly love, because you see them all the time when you drive down Forbidden or ride down Forbidden Drive. When I was doing my thesis, I actually had a pass to drive down the drive. Oh,
Very
it made
slowly.
people very slowly. It made people so mad. All right. Sorry, I'm getting all caught up in my own excitement on this. So this is what I call the Allen's Lane structure. It's also the Mount Airy structure. During the thesis, I did a condition assessment of all the buildings. A brief condition assessment of all buildings, really in-depth condition assessment of one building, and it was Allen's Lane. So this is one of my favorites. The toilet structures. So right across from every one of those little guardhouses is one of these little stone toilet structures, and they're really nicely hidden in the woods. Some of them, like the Allen's Lane one, you can walk by without even realizing it's there. And these also directly come from the Park Service's in the light. And I'm not sure if you can tell, but up, trying to go lightly so I don't change the slide, but up here in these windows are terracotta pipes. The National Park Service also said that toilet shelters should be screened by plantings or natural features, which is exactly what you see at the Rex Avenue. Rex Avenue couldn't be more straight out of their book. They were purely of Wissahickon schist and, like I said, well screened. So I love this map. I kept the center one in instead of redoing it because this is how long ago I did my thesis. Those are pieces of construction paper taped down onto onto a Xerox of a map. You know, it was before all these tricks on the computer. So every one of the structures was built on an existing disturbed site where the mills were or the inns were. And so I'm trying to show on the edge on the older map where the structures were, and then I write what new structure is there. So Bishop's Mill is now got the Fells Mill structures on them. McGargy Mill had the McGargy Mill Comfort Station, which is now gone. The Allen's Lane structures are at Livesey Mill and Gorgas Mill, and so on. So that again, National Park Service guidelines, not to disturb the land if you can possibly not. So they used existing disturbed areas, which had also in that 60 years between when the park took over and demolished these buildings and this program started, had become natural picnic areas because they were clearings. So people were used to stopping at these particular spots. Also, they were put, the guards buildings, at least a couple of them, when I did this, I could not find any indication, any map or anything of where the old guard shelters were, but clearly Kitchens Lane is exactly in the same spot as one of the old guard shelters. And I suspect that that's true of most of them. If there's also some question out there when I was doing the research that these might also be the locations of the original toll booths, because there were toll booths on the Wissahickon Turnpike. So the green arrows on this this kind of pathetic map are the buildings that are essentially gone or were ruins when I got here. So when I did my thesis, nobody had looked at these buildings in a comprehensive manner before. The collective, memory had disappeared about their construction, and people just thought like, oh, look, there's some interesting buildings over there, and never connected the toilet buildings to them, never mapped them to see that the toilet buildings are actually directly across from the guard's house. They were just sort of missing in action, like even the Friends of the Wissahickon hadn't really paid attention to them. And at the time that I started this, there was a debate going on about whether or not to save them or to tear them down. And this, oops, that wasn't supposed to be there. This is why, because this is what they looked like when I arrived. To be honest, 1996. So to be honest, the shrubbery was taken down the moment somebody knew I was paying attention to them. But still, you could see what bad condition they were in. But I did the research, and I had a lot of help from the Friends of the Wissahickon to do the research. I had a lot of help from the then manager of the Wissahickon for Fairmount Park, whose name was Chris Palmer, who was supposed to be here tonight, but he texted me at the last minute that he couldn't make it.
So disappointed.
Yeah.
Love to see Chris Palmer.
So as soon as I was done, oh, I'm sorry, there's a couple more of the condition. I found them in. So the Bells Mill Comfort Station just didn't have a roof anymore. Allen's Lane barely had a roof. This is Allen's Lane again. These are the insides of the structures. This is the Walnut Lane structure and the Walnut Lane toilet building that I mentioned has darker stone than the other buildings and smaller stones than the other buildings. It is a goner. I mean, as soon as we found it this way, we knew it was a goner. I don't think its ruins are even there anymore. I think I tried to find them once since then. So Friends of the Wissahickon, here we go again. They took it by storm and started re-roofing and repairing the raw wood you can see down in this bottom is exactly where that hole was that we saw a picture of a moment ago. And they have been going full blast since, which is just warms my heart. They tried to, they try to remove as little original material as possible. They still use the traditional building styles of mortise and tenon. So they preserve the character of the building. They've even started milling, well, probably not started, probably have been doing it for a while, but they have been milling the wood from the Wissahickon to build onto these buildings. They mill it with a portable sawmill. So I'm happy to say that then I confess that the after pictures are even fairly old now, but it's just remarkable what's happened. Yeah, this one in 1996, one would be somewhat afraid to go under this building because the roof was in such poor condition. And so the building on the top, oh wow, it's really dark for you guys. Sorry about that. That's the Thomas Mill, like right at the other side of the covered bridge. It was one of the original mill buildings that they renovated into toilet buildings and landscaping storage. And the little guard shelters. And then this last slide, I want to just thank on the top right, cutting a tenon was Ed Stanton, who personally funded my thesis. He was the president of the Friends of the Wissahickon at the time and was just a great man. And then the other man is Chris Palmer, who showed me around. He grew up in Roxborough, so he knew the woods like the back of his hand, and he found the Walnut Lane shelter for me without any problem and did way more than he needed to do to help me, help a kid do their graduate thesis. And the bottom is the first crew of volunteers to work on one of the structures, including a very young me there standing with my dog. And thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
I'm also trying to project to the microphone so that our folks on Zoom, because I think I neglected to give them the instruction to find the Smartsheet link in the chat. I'm sure someone's dropped it in there, and I'll be on my phone in a second checking questions. I did want to say a special shout out to the FOW Structures crew, who really still to this day continues the work that Kate and Ed and Chris really got that ball rolling, and are now, this in the next few months starting again on getting back to some of these structures. None of them look as bad, I'm glad to say, as they did when structures first got to them in the late 90s. But these buildings do need continual care, and our structures crew works really hard. I think they have a lot of fun too, but they do great work. You can see some of the projects. I just want to give them some love. We have those benches out there. The wooden benches just went in, and then they replaced wooden benches that are on the other patio around the trees that previous members of the structures crew had put in about maybe 12 or 13 years ago. Could have been longer than that. And they've just replaced them all. So, we're really keeping at it, and great work for them. Okay, so we're going to do questions, and either Kate or I will repeat the question so folks on Zoom can hear it, and we'll really, we'll try to get it done. All right. Yes.
I don't think those bathroom structures are open for bathroom.
No, they are not.
So, but somebody still paid to have it made whole again.
So the question was remarking that the bathroom structures are not being used right now, but somebody still paid to make it whole again. The Friends of the Wissahickon have paid for pretty much all of this. Fairmount Park puts in a little bit, and the Friends of the Wissahickon Structures group puts in the labor. So just to make them live, who knows what we'll be able to do with them eventually.
So we did, some of you may have been here for the restroom master plan presentations over the last few years. And we did look at some of the buildings, whether they were the guard shelters or the old restrooms. And We are hopeful to eventually bring, something back online. But none of them are, other than Kitchens Lane was adaptively reused from the guard shelter into a composting public restroom. So that was done, I think, maybe around 2007.
And that one would be ideal for composting. I think I may have even said that.
That
in
one was
thesis
ideal because they were able to,
Yeah.
the basement chamber and the elevation out of the floodplain.
Yeah.
Looking at some of the other ones, you're getting the creek coming up in a high water situation. Not a huge deal when you have just a concrete pad, not good when you have a composting chamber.
Yeah.
In subterranean.
Yes.
Do you know anything about how the original walkway around the pool was built, the one that's not there anymore?
No, I don't.
That
The question
predates,
was about how the original walkway around Devil's Pool was built and bridge. And no, I try to keep a little bit focused. I should also point out that all the landscaping that was proposed as part of this massive project did go ahead, but there's no records of where it happened. So that could be that. I don't know. When you research WPA projects, they had the sponsor keep the information, and Fairmount Park until about 1990 was not very good at keeping the records. They like to throw away records.
That was still there when I was a lot younger,
Yeah.
useful, but it's really getting the going because now you have to sort of make your way across the.
Yeah, that,
Blue shirt.
You have it off the top of your head, how many total existing buildings built by WPA are there still? And are there other features that you mentioned that are still also around, any kind of other structures or?
there were originally 13 new structures, and 3 of them disappeared. One of the rehabilitated structures has disappeared, but all the rest remain.
And other features, retaining walls and anything like that?
Yeah, that, like I said, there's doesn't seem to be any records of where that happened, so it's hard to answer that.
I guess follow up.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Take it away.
Jumping right at
Go at it.
The retaining walls that you see along the Forbidden Drive, a lot of them are amazing where they're kind of integrated with stone. or
Yeah,
natural
yeah.
stone. Are those presumably WPA or maybe not?
They could be. I mean, the WPA did a ton of work on the landscape. I mean, absolutely. It was, like I said, it was the second largest project in the entirety of Fairmount Park. So yeah, it could well be, but there's no record.
I think we've done some research just on especially the ones that you see that are almost built into the hillside.
Yeah.
And those seem to predate the WPA and are more related to the building of the roadway.
Yeah,
As the,
interesting.
all right, purple.
I was wondering about that map with the red and blue, red and green arrows.
Yeah,
Everything was removed from rock those.
that's interesting. You know, I yeah.
I feel that side is sort of been neglected, but from what you've been saying, it sounds as if all of the funding comes through town.
Well, I'm not sure I would take on the conspiracy. We were just talking about how when this happened, the Roxborough side was really still rural. So it may well be that there just wasn't enough interest because, you know, it was a rural area. Yes.
Building, where, what relates to current Walnut Lane wall?
So we have a question about the Walnut Lane building and its relationship to the golf course.
It's, if I remember right, it's right up against the golf course, but I can't remember. So it's this lowest green arrow. I can't, so the golf course, I'm trying to put that in perspective of an actual map.
Hey, excuse me, I know where that was.
Oh, yeah?
I did state in the park staff, take down the parks that couldn't be rebuilt. If you're on the golf course where the clubhouse is, and it starts to drop off, steeply down towards Forbidden Drive. It was right down in there. Right now, there's a retention pond there. And it was taken down before the retention pond was built. And it was in, this will help answer the other question about the Rockford side. And I don't know the reason for the neglect, but I remember going around with the estate and about the time you were going around with it. And those buildings on the Rock Road side were just in danger of falling over and killing somebody
Yeah.
at this moment. I think really no interest on part of the friendly or the park staff to rehab those. The other ones were in much better shape and they could be rehabbed.
So maybe it is the conspiracy theory, because I mean, the Roxborough ones,
Set up that, I know they were.
because that golf course was constructed by the WPA also. So one would think people are going around the golf course, maybe they'd have some interest in this picnic shelter, but apparently not. Mm, okay. Yeah, that was not the project I researched, but it started at the very beginning. It started with that Woods committee that I mentioned, the Wood committee. That was a Philadelphia organization, and then they carried it through and was finally finished by the WPA. Yes.
Other kinds of things, being built, statuary, fountain, anything like that? for this public plan?
No, not something formal like that. A statuary or a fountain wouldn't, that wouldn't blend into the natural elements. It was really just fences, walls, benches, and these structures.
Any art?
Nope. I heard a really fascinating talk on the fountains in Philadelphia in general by Teresa Stolman, the Fairmount Park archivist or historic preservation officer. And I mean, the fountains are a really cool story, but not my story. Yes.
I'm curious about there's a fountain, I think it's near the Covenant Bridge, maybe the one that says, you know, spring and
Mhm.
for all time. And do you know anything about that?
The only thing I know about fountains I learned from Teresa, and essentially it was because people didn't have plumbing, so they went to the fountains all through the park to get water for their houses. And the Wissahickon was considered a special spring. It was had special properties.
People would come and fill up
Yeah, jugs.
jugs. And then I think once I was determined that the water might not be drinkable anymore, it was closed up.
Obviously, there's still springs.
Yeah,
The springs don't go away. Yeah.
which is kind of bad for the fountains.
Yeah.
But yes.
I remember seeing some pictures of the fencing along the Wissahickon, and it was all natural cut, you know, posts, but
Mhm.
not shaped like bark
Mhm.
posts.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and very rustic, like you might see in the Adirondack.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that was also up in Devil's Pool too, that was all part of that. Just wondering, you know, when those all disappeared, or was there anything about that?
They well, I'm looking at this guard box here on the top. Those are not what you're discussing.
No.
But I have found images of 19th century structures that were that kind of Adirondack style. So I don't know when they disappeared.
There's a
but-
great little book called Along the Wissahickon. I'm not shilling here. We may have a few copies at the office, but that has some of those photos of the bridges over Devil's Pool and some of the old fencing structures in that Adirondack style, with some of the dates. I'm not going to try to quote, but I do think most of that predates the WPA,
Yeah.
but fairly significantly. And the last of them were probably out in the 70s, I think.
Yeah,
Uh,
architecturally.
David Bauer's gonna add some insights here. You don't happen, you have it with you?
I have in my possession a copy of the report that the Fairmount Park Commissioners made to the mayor and city council. They do annual reports. This was about I'm gonna say 75, give or take a couple of years. And they were bragging about the fact that they weren't gonna build these rustic wooden fences anymore. They were gonna use cast concrete fence posts with rebar in them that were gonna last for eternity. It was gonna save a lot of expense and a lot of labor, and it was early to mid 1970s.
Okay. Well, I mean, architecturally, that style would have been late 19th century. So that's when they would have arrived. But now we know in 1975, they were taking them down. Yes.
Do you know if any of the WPA photographers came here and photographed?
The photograph up in the top corner was WPA. I tried to use the WPA pictures on most of these historic ones were WPA. So yes, they did come. I don't know how extensively they came. I went to the Library of Congress, and that's all I've found, because the sponsor is supposed to keep the information. And at least in 1996, the sponsor couldn't find the information. So not you guys.
I have one question so far from the folks who are listening at home, and is the map of the structures. And I'm assuming it's you're not complimentary of your handmade map, but I think we all really love it. Yes, right? It's so nice to see. If folks are wondering if it's available on our website, I do not believe it is. That's something
My handmade map?
yes.
Well, that I'd be happy to share it.
And Kate's happy to share it, so we'll get it out there some way, somehow.
It's actually also, my thesis is a PDF online.
Okay.
So it can be downloaded
People
too.
can
if
find
they-
it.
Yeah,
So,
but I'd be happy to share it with you
wonderful.
guys.
Thank you. All right.
Yes.
The picnic structure at Coachella Field on the Roxborough side, is that a WPA? It looks similar to the Bluebell.
This is the one you were talking
Yeah.
about earlier.
Mhm.
And this is why we concluded, it was not part of this program if it was WPA, but we were talking earlier and we thought, well, the Roxborough, that would have been a farm at that time. So I think they just did a really good job mimicking the WPA.
Anything was built later.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think people were necessarily, I mean, this is just my gut reaction that people wouldn't.
Or it might have
No.
been this was a discrete project.
Yeah,
These
that's true.
buildings, and so maybe there was follow-up.
Yeah.
Something that happened later, but.
Well, and also there's other projects in Fairmount Park, which, I mean, if you drive down Kelly Drive, right across from the grandstands is a little WPH toilet structure. Good luck ever trying to get there, but it's it's completely, I don't know its origin at all, but it's definitely WPA. Yes.
Another specific question, down at the Bin Drive, the past orders are brought. For there's structure, walls, it looks like a little jail.
Yes.
What was that?
Wait, are we talking about the one that's curved on the top? Oh, okay. I think that was a spring.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
I know the residents of the Gorgas built.
Right. Yeah. And the hermit. Yes.
Around the hospital stand.
We're revisiting the hot dog stand.
Yeah. What was it like? I mean, were there vendors for?
Oh, no, that never happened. Everybody went too controversial. Yeah. Everybody went insane.
Anybody know anything about the poem that's part of the rock at Devil's Pool? The Black Shakespeare poem.
No, I don't.
I know that there's a poem at a rock at Devil's Pool.
There is.
Shakespeare poem.
Dan?
David?
I don't recall, but I believe it's specified in the Metropolitan Paradise book.
Yes.
For sure.
Another great resource, Metropolitan Paradise, 4 volumes on the Wissahickon. And I think we have a few copies still at the office, but has been out of print for a bit. All right.
What, wait,
What?
what was the location of that shady, hotel there?
Oh, shoot, I looked it up and now I can't remember.
And what was it called?
The log cabin.
Yeah, the log cabin.
Sure, that walkway right there, it's like down past the Henry Avenue Bridge, it was like that part of the Wissahickon way down on Lincoln Drive at the very bottom.
Okay, I'm getting nods from the back too.
Yeah. It's there now, it's very close to where the Leonidas Springs fountain is.
Yes.
Coming out of the city. And the fountain, the little cutoff there is on the right, that's very near where the last cabin was.
All right.
You're the other end, right? And so they're the police station or the what?
There were three, yeah.
Yeah.
Wissahickon Hall is where the police station was, and there was one in between called the Maple Springs Hotel.
And they were famous for catfish and waffles.
Yeah.
Which we had on Friday night
Did you
here.
really? Oh, that's awesome.
Yes. All right. Everyone, thank you so much. I think we give a round of applause. Thank you.